There is a quiet kind of magic happening in kitchens across Britain right now. A pensioner stood at the worktop on a Tuesday morning, turning 2 pounds of mince and a bag of frozen veg into 9 separate dinners, each one stacked neatly in the freezer for less than the price of a postage stamp. While the rest of us hand over £4 for a sad supermarket-ready meal, they are eating proper, hot, filling food for pennies. This is not making do. This is wisdom. Today we are counting down 25 genius freezer meals that stretch a tiny budget into a fortnight of dinners. Stick around and hit subscribe because number 1 feeds the whole family for the price of a coffee. Number 25. Scotch broth. This is the meal that taught Britain how to make something out of almost nothing, and it freezes like a dream. You start with a cheap lamb bone or a few neck pieces, the sort the butcher used to give away and now sells for under £1. In goes a handful of pearl barley, split peas, a swede, a couple of carrots, and an onion. Then you let it tick away on the hob for 2 hours while the kitchen windows fog up. One pot makes 6 bowls. You ladle it into old margarine tubs, let it cool, and freeze. The barley keeps it thick even after defrosting, and the flavour actually deepens overnight in the cold. A whole batch costs around £1.50, which works out at roughly 25p a portion. On a grey afternoon when the heating is off to save money, a bowl of Scotch broth warms you from the inside out, and there is always more waiting in the freezer. Number 24. Batch beef mince base. This is the secret that every clever cook knows. You do not freeze finished dishes. You freeze the beginning of a dozen of them. Brown off 2 pounds of cheap beef mince with onions, a tin of tomatoes, a splash of Worcester sauce, and a beef stock cube. Then you bag it flat in freezer bags, 4 portions to a batch. From that one humble base, you can pull a cottage pie on Monday, a chili on Wednesday, a Bolognese on Friday. It defrosts in minutes because the flat bags thaw fast. 2 pounds of mince on offer at Aldi or Lidl runs about £5 and gives you the foundation for 8 meals. That is 60p a meal before you have even added the trimmings. Your gran did this without a chest freezer. Imagine what she would have done with one. Number 23. Cottage pie portions. Take that mince base, top it with mashed potato, and you have the most comforting dinner in Britain, ready to bake from frozen. The trick the older generation knew is to portion it into individual foil dishes rather than one big tray. That way you only ever heat one meal at a time, and you're not paying to warm an entire casserole for one person. A knob of butter and a splash of milk in the mash, a sprinkle of cheese on top, and you have something that costs around 40p a portion but tastes like a Sunday treat. Freeze them uncovered first so the mash sets, then wrap each one. Straight from the freezer into the oven, no defrosting needed. The fork marks crisp up golden, and nobody would ever guess it had been sitting in the cold for a month. Number 22. Leek and potato soup. Leeks are one of the cheapest vegetables in the country, especially at the end of the day when the greengrocer wants rid of them. Sweat a few down in butter, add a couple of potatoes and a litre of stock, simmer for 20 minutes, and blitz. That is it. The potato gives it body without a drop of expensive cream, though a swirl of milk at the end never hurt anyone. A full pot costs under £1 and gives you 5 generous portions. It freezes beautifully in old ice cream tubs, and a mug of it makes a proper lunch for less than 20p. There is a reason this soup turned up in every wartime kitchen and every modern food bank parcel alike. It is dignity in a bowl, and it costs next to nothing. Number 21. Sausage and bean casserole. Here is where cheap sausages become a feast. 8 value sausages, browned and cut into chunks, a tin of baked beans, a tin of chopped tomatoes, an onion, and a shake of smoked paprika. 20 minutes in a pan, and you have a thick, smoky, sticky casserole that clings to a slice of bread. The beans thicken it naturally, so there is no flour, no fuss. A pack of sausages for £1 and 2 tins for 40p makes 4 big servings, which is about 35p each. It freezes without splitting or going watery, and it reheats in a single pan on the hob, which matters when every minute of the gas ring costs money. This is the kind of meal that fills a hungry grandchild and a tight budget at the same time. Number 20. Lentil soup. Dried red lentils are perhaps the single greatest bargain in any British shop. A bag costs about £1 and makes soup for a week. They need no soaking, they cook in 20 minutes, and they turn into a thick golden pottage with nothing more than an onion, a carrot, and a stock cube. A rasher of bacon chopped in at the start lifts it to something special, but it is grand without. 1 pot, 6 bowls, and the cost barely registers, perhaps 15 pence a portion. It freezes solid and reheats thick, and a spoonful of curry powder turns yesterday's soup into something entirely new. The older generation lived through times when a bag of lentils stood between a family and an empty table, and they never forgot how far it could stretch. Number 19. Cheese and onion pasties. There is no need to pay a bakery £2 for what you can make for 30 pence. A block of short crust pastry, a pile of mashed potato, a grated onion, and a fistful of cheap cheddar. You spoon it into pastry circles, crimp the edges with a fork, and freeze them raw on a tray before bagging. When you fancy one, you bake it straight from frozen, and 25 minutes later, the kitchen smells like the corner shop on a school morning. A batch of 8 costs around £2 all in. They make a hot lunch, a packed dinner, or a snack to hand a visiting grandchild. Crimping the edges is the bit that takes practice, but once your thumb learns the rhythm, you will turn out a dozen without thinking. Number 18. Chickpea and vegetable curry. Meat is dear, but a tin of chickpeas costs less than a stamp, and a curry made from store-cupboard staples can feed a family for next to nothing. Onion, a tin of tomatoes, a tin of chickpeas, a handful of frozen peas, and a generous spoon of curry powder bubbled together for half an hour. Serve it over rice and you have a meal that costs about 30 pence a head. It is one of the best freezers on this list because the flavors marry better after a week in the cold than they ever do fresh. Portion it into tubs and you have ready meals that put the supermarket versions to shame. A jar of curry powder lasts months and turns the cheapest ingredients into something with real warmth and spice. Number 17. Fish pie. People think fish is a luxury, but a bag of frozen white fish pieces is one of the cheaper proteins in the freezer aisle, and it was made to be cooked from frozen. Poach the fish in milk, make a simple sauce from that same milk, fold in some frozen peas, and top with mashed potato. The clever bit our nans knew is that fish pie freezes far better before baking than after. So you assemble it cold and freeze it raw. A pie that feeds 4 costs around £2.50, so well under £1 a portion, and it bakes from frozen into something that looks like it came from a proper kitchen. The cheese-crusted potato over creamy fish is the sort of supper that makes a cold evening feel cared for. Number 16. Bubble and squeak patties. Here is the first proper trick of thrift. Never throw away leftover veg. Mash together yesterday's cold potatoes, cabbage, sprouts, whatever is going spare, shape it into flat cakes, and freeze them on a tray. They cost you absolutely nothing because the ingredients were destined for the bin. When you want one, you fry it from frozen until the edge is crisp and brown, and the smell takes half the street back to childhood. A fried egg on top turns it into a full meal for the price of the egg alone. This is the dish that proves the old way was the clever way. Where we see waste, your grandmother saw tomorrow's tea. Every Sunday, roast quietly produced a week of free breakfasts, and not a scrap of it ever went begging. Number 15. Spaghetti Bolognese. From that mince base at number 24, a proper Bolognese is minutes away, and it is arguably the best thing in any freezer. Simmer the base low and slow with a grated carrot for sweetness and a squeeze of tomato puree for depth. Then freeze it in family portions. The sauce loses nothing in the cold and reheats while the pasta boils. A portion costs around 40 pence, and a bag of dried spaghetti for 60 pence stretches across half a dozen meals. The genius is that the sauce is the expensive bit and the pasta is the cheap bit, so a small amount of meat feeds a great many mouths. This is how Italian grandmothers and British ones alike kept their families fed, and it is why no freezer in the land should be without a tub of it. Number 14. Pea and ham soup. A ham hock is one of those forgotten cuts the butcher almost gives away, and it makes the most luxurious soup imaginable for the price of a newspaper. Simmer the hock with a bag of dried green split peas and an onion for a couple of hours until the meat falls off the bone and the peas collapse into a thick green pottage. You shred the meat back through it and the soup turns so dense a spoon will nearly stand up in it. One hock and a bag of peas, both well under 2 pounds together, makes 8 enormous bowls. That is around 20 pence a portion of pure smoky comfort. It freezes thick and reheats thicker, and the smell of it simmering is the smell of 100 years of careful British kitchens. Number 13. Toad in the hole. This one surprises people because nobody believes batter can survive the freezer, but cooked toad in the hole reheats beautifully. Bake your sausages in a tray of Yorkshire pudding batter until risen and golden, let it cool, then cut it into portions and freeze. The batter crisps right back up in a hot oven. 6 value sausages, a cup of flour, an egg, and some milk make a dish that feeds 4 for under £1.50 pounds. The corners, where the batter meets the tin and turns almost biscuit hard, were always the prized pieces, fought over at every table. Now you can freeze those corners and have one whenever you please. A drizzle of onion gravy on top, and you have a dinner that costs pennies but feels like a proper occasion. Number 12. Chicken and leek pie. When a roast chicken is picked clean, the older generation never binned the carcass. They built a second meal from the bones, strip every last shred of meat, soften some leeks in butter, make a simple white sauce, and fold it all together. Tip it into a dish, lay a sheet of pastry over the top, and freeze it raw. Baked from frozen, the pastry puffs golden and the filling bubbles through the slits. Because the meat was effectively free, left over from Sunday, a whole pie can cost as little as £1 for the pastry and sauce. That is one chicken giving you a roast dinner and a pie, 2 meals for the price of 1 bird. This is the thrift that ran a household on a quarter of what we spend today. Number 11. Corned beef hash. A tin of corned beef has sat in British cupboards through every hard winter for 70 years, and it makes a hash that freezes without complaint. Dice the corned beef with cooked potatoes and onion, bind it with a little gravy or a beaten egg, and shape it into a tin or into patties. The whole lot costs around £1.50 and feeds 4. You can fry it from frozen or bake it in a dish, and the edges go crisp and salty while the middle stays soft. It was the meal that saw families through rationing and strikes alike, waiting quietly in the larder for a lean week. A fried egg and a splash of brown sauce turns it into a feast, and the freezer keeps a fortnight's worth ready at a moment's notice. Number 10. Faggots in onion gravy. Here is a proper piece of forgotten Britain. Faggots, made from cheap pork mince, a little liver if you can get it, breadcrumbs, onion, and sage, rolled into balls and baked in a rich onion gravy. They were the Black Country's answer to feeding a family on a few pence, and they freeze magnificently in their gravy. The breadcrumbs hold everything together through the cold, and the gravy reheats glossy and dark. A batch of a dozen costs around £2 and makes 4 hearty dinners with mash and peas. That is 50 pence a plate for something most people now pay a fortune for at a gastropub. The trick is to freeze them sitting in plenty of gravy, so they never dry out. Pull a tub from the freezer, heat it gently, and you have a supper that tastes of another century. Number 9. Macaroni cheese, the cheapest comfort food in Britain, and it was practically designed for the freezer. A few handfuls of macaroni, a simple sauce of flour, butter, milk, and whatever cheese is going hard at the back of the fridge. The clever cooks always added a spoonful of mustard powder to make a little cheese taste like a lot. Portion it into foil dishes, scatter breadcrumbs or extra cheese on top, and freeze. Baked from frozen, the top turns golden and crunchy, while the inside stays molten. A whole batch of 4 portions costs under £1.50, so around 35 pence each. It uses up the ends of cheese that would otherwise go to waste, and it fills a child or a grandparent equally well. Few things on this earth are as cheaply, reliably cheering as a hot bowl of macaroni cheese. Number 8. Sausage rolls. The bakery sells them for over £1 each. You can make a tray of a dozen for the price of 2. A block of puff pastry, a pack of value sausage meat or sausages squeezed from their skins, a little sage and pepper rolled up and cut into pieces. The genius move is to freeze them raw on a tray, then bag them, so you can bake just 1 or 20 as the mood takes you. From frozen to golden takes 25 minutes, and the smell brings the whole house to the kitchen. A dozen costs around £2 all in, which is under 20 pence a roll. They make a lunch, a buffet, a packed snack, or something warm to offer a visitor with a cup of tea. No shop-bought roll ever matched one still warm from your own oven. Number 7. Beef stew with dumplings. The king of the cheap freezer meal. A pound of stewing beef, the tough cut that needs hours but costs a fraction of a steak, browned and simmered with carrots, onions, and a beef stock cube until the meat falls apart. The dumplings, made from flour and a little sweet, you add fresh when you reheat, because they cook in 15 minutes and never need freezing themselves. A whole pot of stew costs around £3 and feeds 6, so 50 pence a bowl for the kind of meal that warms a cold house better than the heating ever could. It freezes thick and reheats thicker, the flavour growing deeper with every day in the cold. This is the meal that built Britain through every hard winter, and it is just as honest today. Number 6. Cornish-style pasties. The original portable meal designed to be carried down a mine and eaten with dirty hands. Diced beef skirt, potato, swede, and onion, all raw, wrapped in pastry and crimped along one edge. The magic is that everything cooks inside the parcel, so it is the simplest thing in the world to assemble. You freeze them raw and bake from frozen, around 45 minutes, until the pastry is deep gold. A batch of 6 costs around £3, so 50 pence a pasty, for a complete dinner you can hold in one hand. The crimped edge was originally the handle, held and thrown away by miners with grubby fingers. Now it is just the prettiest part. One of these, and a mug of tea, is a meal that has fed working Britain for 200 years. Number 5. Chili con carne. Back to that mince base one more time, because it earns its keep. Add a tin of kidney beans, a tin of tomatoes, and a good spoon of chili powder and cumin, then let it bubble down thick. The beans bulk it out so a little meat goes a very long way, dropping the cost to around 35 pence a portion. It is one of the finest freezers in any kitchen, the spice mellowing and rounding out after a week in the cold. Serve it over rice, in a baked potato, or with a hunk of bread to mop the bowl. A chest freezer full of labelled tubs of chili is a fortnight of dinners that need nothing more than a pan and 5 minutes. This is modern thrift learning from old thrift, and the result feeds a great many for very little. Number 4. Homemade bread rolls. Here is the second great trick, and it shocks people. Bread is the easiest thing in the world to freeze, and home-baked is a fraction of the shop price. A bag of strong flour, a sachet of yeast, water and a pinch of salt make a dozen rolls for around 40 pence. You bake them, let them cool, and freeze them in a bag. They defrost in an hour on the side, or a few minutes in a warm oven, and they taste exactly as if they had just come from the baker. The wisdom here is that you never buy bread that goes stale and gets thrown away. You bake a big batch, freeze it, and pull out exactly what you need. A loaf wasted was unthinkable in your grandmother's kitchen, and the freezer means it never has to happen again. Number 3. Steak and kidney pudding. The monarch of British sweat puddings, and proof that the cheapest cuts make the richest meals. Stewing beef and a few pennies worth of kidney simmered in dark gravy, sealed inside a sweat pastry case. The filling is what you freeze, in portions, because it is the part that takes the time. When you want a pudding, you line a basin with fresh sweat pastry, fill it, and steam. The filling, made deep and savoury over a slow hour, costs around £2 for 4 servings. That is the sort of meal that once crowned the Sunday table. The basin turned out steaming, the crust splitting to show the dark, fragrant inside. Few people make it now, thinking it too much trouble. But with the filling waiting in the freezer, it is the easiest grand dinner you will ever serve. Number 2. Meatballs in tomato sauce. Cheap mince rolled with breadcrumbs, onion, and a beaten egg to make it stretch, browned and dropped into a simple tomato sauce. The breadcrumbs are the trick the older generation never skipped, soaking up the sauce and making a pound of meat feed 6. They freeze in their sauce in family tubs and reheat while the pasta boils. A whole batch costs around £2.50, so well under 50 pence a portion. The meatballs stay tender because the sauce protects them through the cold, and the flavor only improves with time. Serve them over spaghetti, in a roll, or with mash, and you have 3 different dinners from one freezer tub. This is the meal that makes a small amount of meat feel like generosity, which is exactly what a tight budget needs. Number 1. Scouse. And in first place, the great Liverpool stew that fed a whole city through its hardest century. Cheap stewing beef or lamb, potatoes, carrots, onions, and a couple of stock cubes simmered for hours until half the potatoes melt into the broth and thicken it, while the rest stay whole. There is no recipe more forgiving, no meal more generous. A great potful costs around £3 and feeds 8, which is well under 40 pence a bowl, the price of a coffee spread across the whole family. It freezes perfectly, the flavour deepening every day in the cold, and a slice of bread and butter on the side makes it a feast. Scouse was born of dockers and hard times, of stretching a shilling until it screamed, and yet it remains one of the most satisfying things you can eat. It is the perfect freezer meal because it was always meant to be made big, shared wide, and saved for tomorrow. So there you have it. 25 meals that turn a few pounds into a full freezer and prove that eating well was never about money. It was about knowing how. Tell me in the comments which one you are making first and which your own nan used to put on the table. And if this brought back a memory or saved you a few pennies, give it a like and subscribe. Your grandparents knew. Now you do too.